morning. I'm Maiki Oreta, and you're watching Business 360, where we break down the numbers, connect the dots, and give you the developments and the insights you need to navigate, adapt, and lead. Let's dive right in. Moody's Analytics warns the Philippine economy could once again miss its growth targets for 2025 and 2026 as the global uncertainties continue to cloud the country's economic prospects. The Agriculture Department unveils plans to build 2 food hubs worth 14 billion pesos aimed at strengthening supply chains and stabilizing farm gate prices. And in politics, Senator Amy Marcos officially breaks away from her brother, President Bongbong Marcos's senatorial slate, declaring her plans to run as an independent. First, let's take a look at how financial markets performed overnight. 2 out of the 3 main indexes on Wall Street closed sharply lower Wednesday, weighed down by steep losses in tech heavyweights Nvidia and Tesla, as investors await details on long-anticipated U.S. tariffs on automotive imports. U.S. President Donald Trump is expected to unveil those plans in a press conference later today, a move that could deepen the global trade war his administration kicked off earlier this year. Auto industry experts warn that the tariffs could drive up vehicle prices and disrupt manufacturing globally, with ripple effects likely to reach supply chains across Asia, including the Philippines.
Just the volatility, the uncertainty, are we going to have tariffs? Are we not going to have tariffs? Is taking its toll. Tariffs are, expected to be inflationary. Inflation, we don't want to see inflation going up. But I would also point out that over the last few years, when inflation was higher than it had been prior to that, the markets actually did okay. It didn't seem like it was inflation itself that was the problem. But I think more recently, it's the uncertainty about that inflation. You can't plan. You don't know what to do if you don't know what's going to happen.
The Dow Jones Industrial Average fell 0.3%. The S&P 500 lost 1.1% rather, and the Nasdaq lost 2% in its worst one-day performance in weeks. Over in Europe, markets ended mixed as investors remained cautious ahead of global trade developments. The UK's FTSE 100 higher by 0.3%, Germany's DAX lower sharply, down by 1.2%, and France's CAC 40 down by 1%. The Philippine economy may again fall short of its growth targets in 2025 and 2026, raising concerns about the country's ability to maintain momentum amid global volatility. Moody's Analytics economist Sarah Tan forecasts growth of 5.9% next year and 5.8% in 2026, both below the government's 6 to 8% target range. Tan cites global headwinds, including uncertainty over U.S. tariff policies, as key factors weighing on that outlook. In 2024, the Philippine economy grew by just 5.6%, falling short of target for a second straight year due to weak consumer spending and lower agricultural output. Tan says while private consumption and investments remain core growth drivers, to remain resilient and attractive to investors, the Philippines must double down on structural reforms, enhance productivity, and build a business environment that can withstand geopolitical shocks, especially as the global trade landscape grows more complex and competitive. While growth projections may be under pressure, one bright spot remains: the country's banking system. The Philippine banking sector's credit profile is expected to stay stable, a positive sign for investors and businesses looking for financing in an uncertain global environment. Fitch Ratings cites strong macroeconomic fundamentals as a key reason for its outlook. It highlights the Philippines' resilient medium-term growth potential and the continued strength of local banks driven by robust loan demand and sound balance sheets. Fitch recently upgraded the country's banking sector operating environment score to BBB- from BB+, and also raised the viability ratings of local banks by 1 notch. With banks playing a crucial role in supporting MSMEs, infrastructure, and industry expansion, a stable banking backdrop helps bolster confidence, encourage capital flows, and it keeps the Philippine economy moving forward. Meantime, the global uncertainty isn't just impacting growth projections, it's also weighing on the peso. The local currency may slide to a record low of 60 against the US dollar this year as markets brace for the impact of President Donald Trump's protectionist trade policies. BPI's lead economist, Bilyonaryo Jr., warns that the peso could weaken to as low as 60.90 per dollar by the third quarter, citing heightened volatility from Trump's shifting stance on tariffs, particularly toward China, Canada, and Mexico. Trump is expected to announce details of a reciprocal tariff plan on April 2nd, though he recently said a lot of countries may be exempted. On Wednesday, the peso closed at 57.69 per dollar, down 9 centavos from Tuesday's finish of 57.60. A weaker peso could drive up import costs, erode consumer purchasing power, and put more pressure on local businesses dependent on foreign inputs at a time when Filipino firms are already navigating tighter global conditions. The Department of Agriculture plans to build 2 food hubs worth 15 billion pesos to strengthen the country's supply chain and ease price volatility in farm goods. Agriculture Assistant Secretary Arnel de Mesa says one hub will rise in Clark, Pampanga to serve as a market gateway for produce from northern Luzon. Another hub is planned in Quezon Province to cater to farmers in southern Tagalog and in the Bicol region. De Mesa adds that the initiative is part of Secretary Francisco Tiu Laurel's push to stabilize food prices and minimize post-harvest losses by improving cold storage and logistics. The project is expected to break ground early next year. Modernizing agri-supply chains is crucial for lowering food costs, reducing waste, and attracting private sector investment, all of which can help boost the agriculture sector's contribution to national growth. The Department of Agriculture, or DA, is set to cut the maximum suggested retail price of imported rice to 45 pesos per kilo starting Monday, marking the 4th price reduction in just over 2 months. The DA says that the move follows India's decision to lift its year-long export ban on non-basmati white rice, a development that has driven global prices to their lowest levels in over 2 years. The agency noted that imported rice was selling for as high as 64 pesos per kilo, even after global prices fell. Tariffs were reduced and the peso strengthened. The MSRP was initially set at 58 pesos per kilo in January, then lowered to 52 pesos in February and 49 pesos earlier this month. The DA's aggressive price management strategy aims to ease pressure on household budgets and curb food inflation, a key concern for consumers and businesses alike, as rice remains a major driver of the country's cost of living. The Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, or BSP, is expected to cut interest rates by 50 basis points in 2025. That's according to the Bank of the Philippine Islands. The projection is lower than the 75 basis point cut earlier signaled by BSP Governor Eli Remolona Jr. Sujin Kim has the details.
The Bank of the Philippine Islands expects the Bangko Sentral to begin cutting interest rates by April 10, possibly trimming up to 50 basis points this year, especially while inflation remains contained and the peso holds around 57 to the dollar. With a second cut, BPI Chief Economist June Neri says, trailing just before the 4th quarter. However, there are risks to the outlook that could affect the rate cuts. Looming risks include a 1-week remittance boycott, intensifying global trade strains, and a resurging dollar. BPI is especially watching the April 2 announcement from U.S. President Donald Trump on reciprocal tariffs, which could spark stagflation in the U.S. and throw off rate cut plans altogether.
Politics will always be a risk. It's actually a risk globally. Favorable thing for us if we see this issue actually deteriorating. But for now, we're not really looking at the possibility of this affecting overall sentiment on the sectors that seem to be very promising.
One more risk, a planned remittance boycott by some OFWs from March 28 to April 4 in protest of former President Rodrigo Duterte's arrest. Estimates show up to 97.3 million pesos could be lost per day if the boycott gains traction.
Kaya bakis na ma-afford nila na hindi mapadala yung mga relatives nila, then that will clearly widen the current account position, negative position, and have some negative consequences on the exchange. It may actually even affect interest rates. Baka hindi makapag-cut si BSP if the outflow or the inflow is really dries up substantially. Again, it's a very hypothetical situation that personally I doubt it can be delivered or it can happen. Yeah.
The more important thing is the continuation of the economic reforms. Will hopefully, again, after the elections, will help drown out this noise coming from the ICC and the Netherlands.
Meanwhile, the BSP's scheduled triple R cut pushes through this Friday, March 28, a move seen to increase system liquidity without overheating the economy. The cut is expected to support lending for strategic sectors including energy, industrial zones, data centers, and medical tourism. But the rate cut window could close fast. BPI warns that once the base effects of rice inflation fade in the second half, the BSP may lose room to ease. And for now, cutting below 5% should be off the table.
You're safe if we reduce rates below 5. No? We'll have all of these side effects again of overbuilding and overexposure in misallocation of resources, and inequality worsening if we lower our interest rates much more than 5, much lower than 5%. No? So kung recession lang, BSP can continue and maybe stop at 4.75 or 5% on the.
Sujin Kim, Bilyonaryo News Channel.
We're taking a quick break. Please stay with us as we dive deep into the numbers and the narratives that matter most to your bottom line. Welcome back. Let's take a look at how Asian markets are faring this Thursday morning. Right now, the Nikkei 225 is down sharply, down by 1.2%. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index going the other way, higher by 0.7%. Shanghai Composite up marginally, up by 0.1%. And Singapore Straits Times Index higher by 0.7%. Now, taking a look at the Philippine Stock Exchange, as of 10:16 this morning, the main gauge is in the red, lower, but not by much, down by just 0.1% to 61.58. The broader all shares index in the red as well, lower by a bit more, down by 0.6% to 36.56. As for the sub-indices, we're seeing a mixed picture. The financials, industrial, and services sectors are in the red, while the holding firms, property counter, and the mining and oil sector are in the green. The mining and oil counter is up sharply in early trade, higher by a little over 1%. And at the foreign exchange market, the peso opened stronger at 57.68 against the dollar from its previous close of 57.69. Now, Senator Amy Marcos withdraws from the senatorial slate of her brother, President Bongbong Marcos, ahead of the 2025 midterm elections. Amy announced that she will now run as an independent after skipping a recent sortie of the administration-aligned Alianza para sa Bagong Pilipinas. She says her absence was a form of protest against the arrest of former President Rodrigo Duterte. The senator earlier presided over a Senate hearing on the legality of Duterte's arrest, though the proceedings yielded little, with Justice Secretary Jesus Crispin Remulla invoking executive privilege. Amy Marcos's departure from her brother's slate comes amid shifts in political loyalties and repositioning ahead of the polls. With survey numbers in flux and public sentiment still taking shape, this latest move may reflect deepening divisions or a calculated realignment in a high-stakes election season. Signs of movement in the impeachment case against Vice President Sara Duterte. The House prosecution panel is now laying the groundwork for what could become one of the most politically charged trials in recent memory. The 11-member panel met behind closed doors on Wednesday, just a day after formally asking the Senate to issue a summons to the vice president. Lawmakers say they are now weighing their next steps if Senate President Chiz Escudero continues to hold off or move the trial forward.
I believe that the entire team is on its full swing of preparation, no? So, dalawa lang naman kailangan naming tutukan dyan, argument and evidence. That's it. I hope she takes advantage of this due process na ibinibigay sa kanya in the impeachment process, no? Kasi the good thing about this impeachment process, hindi naman po ang prosecutors lang ang bibigyan ng pagkakataong maglatag ng ebidensya. Even the defense will be given the opportunity to present its evidence.
But while the House panel moves to accelerate the impeachment process, Senate President Chiz Escudero is urging caution. His statement comes after members of the House pressed the Senate on Wednesday to begin the proceedings, with House lead prosecutor Marcelito Libanan formally calling for a summons to the vice president. Escudero says he intends to stick to the rules and to the timelines set by law, stressing the procedure must come first. The impeachment trial is currently set to begin on July 30th.
Kahit naman makumbinsi mo ko, illegal pa rin yun so hindi ko gagawin. I will not do anything that is illegal. I would rather be more prudent and more closely faithful to what the law provides than go through these experimental procedures that they would want us to do at this point.
Former Solicitor General Estelito Mendoza has died at the age of 95. The Philippine National Bank confirmed Mendoza's passing on Wednesday. A titan in the legal field, Mendoza served as government's top lawyer under President Ferdinand Marcos Sr. and later sat on the board of the PNB. He was known for representing some of the country's most prominent political figures, including former President Joseph Estrada during his impeachment and former President Gloria Macapagal-Arroyo in her plunder case. Mendoza also defended former Senate President Juan Ponce Enrile and Senator Bong Revilla in the pork barrel scam trials. Most recently, he was selected by Vice President Sara Duterte as her legal counsel in issues involving confidential funds. We're taking a short break. Business 360 will be right back. In news overseas, tensions continue to rise in Israel as thousands of protesters converge outside parliament on Wednesday, adding to growing domestic pressure on Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's government. Demonstrators are calling for national elections and the immediate return of hostages still held by Hamas in Gaza. The protests coincide with a parliamentary debate on a highly controversial bill that would restructure the Judicial Appointments Committee, a move critics warn could undermine checks and balances and spark a new constitutional crisis. Israel's military has also resumed its offensive against Hamas, designated a terrorist organization by the U.S. and the EU after a two-month ceasefire collapsed last week. The escalating political and security crisis in Israel, a strategic partner of the Philippines in technology, agriculture, and defense, could impact bilateral projects and heighten risks for overseas Filipino workers and companies with ties to the Middle East. On another front, U.S. President Donald Trump said on Wednesday that his national security advisor, Mike Waltz, has taken responsibility for the leak of U.S. attack plans against the Houthis, but stopped short of saying whether Waltz would face sanctions. Trump also cleared Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, saying he had nothing to do with that leak. The president added that he wants a full review to determine if human error or a security flaw in the Cignal messaging app was to blame for that breach.
They have been hit harder than they've ever been hit, and they want us to stop so badly. And they've got to stop. They've got to say no mas. But I can only say that the attacks, it's attacks every day, every night. It's not just the one. You're talking about one. The attacks have been very successful, even beyond our wildest expectations. We've hit them very hard, very successfully, and we're going to do it for a long time. We're going to keep it going for a long time.
The security lapse raises serious questions about communication protocols in Washington, with potential implications for allies like the Philippines that rely on the U.S. for defense support, intelligence sharing, and stability in strategic regions like the West Philippine Sea. Still in the U.S. forces launch a series of airstrikes targeting Houthi-controlled areas around Yemen's capital, Sana'a, late Wednesday as tensions in the region continue to escalate. Yemeni media reports say that these strikes hit multiple locations north and south of the capital, including fortified military barracks in northern regions. 2 airstrikes also hit the Dalai Lami Air Base. So far, no casualties have been reported. The U.S. has intensified its air campaign against the Houthis since March 15th, following a series of attacks on commercial shipping routes in the Red Sea. Disruptions in that Red Sea, a critical trade artery linking Asia to Europe, are pushing up shipping costs and delivery times worldwide. Philippine exporters and importers could feel the ripple effects through delayed shipments, higher freight costs, and inflationary pressures on goods moving through global supply chains. Before we go, a breakthrough win that's putting Filipino excellence front and center on the global stage. Our 19-year-old tennis star Alex Ayala delivers her biggest win yet at the Miami Open, stunning the world number 2 to advance to the semifinals. Ayala defeated 5-time Grand Slam champion Iga Swiatek in straight sets, 6-2, 7-5, showing composure, power, and focus from start to finish. Her run in Miami includes earlier wins over world number 5 Madison Keys and former French Open champ Jelena Ostapenko in a string of upsets that's turned heads across the tennis world.
I don't know. My coach told me to run, to go for every ball, take all the opportunities I can, because 5-time Grand Slam champion is not going to give you the win.
Very emotional for you, very emotional for your camp today. Will you remember this day for the rest of your life? It is the biggest day of your career here at the Miami Open.
It's forever in my heart.
And you're forever in our hearts.
Next, Ayala will face the winner between American 4th seed Jessica Pegula and British star Emma Raducanu. Overall, Alex Ayala isn't just winning matches. She's redefining what it means to represent the Philippines on the global stage. Calm, confident, and world-class. And that's it for Business 360. I'm Maiki Oreta. Keep it here on BNC, the Bilyonaryo News Channel.